AskReddit by Insert Burns here. What is the biggest unsolved mystery in human history? Two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. Arthur C. Clarke. Talk about corporate greed is nonsense. Corporations are greedy by their nature. They are nothing else, they are instruments for interfering with markets to maximize profit, and wealth and market control. You can't make them more or less greedy. Noam Chomsky. Free market fantasies, capitalism in the real world. I just want to add I love the designs of some of these characters. This one looks like a cowboy hat. This one looks like a modern trash bin symbol. A grill. Candelabra. Cocktail. Default profile pic. Pickaxes. Bull getting hit by a bull. Railroad crossing. Headless cane man. Heat squiggles. I'm not sure if you'd call this unsolved or frankly even solvable. But there are two trees found in parts of Central America, called the Chechen tree and the choca tree. The Chechen tree's bark has a poison that is so strong that just by touching the bark, or its sap of course, your skin will begin to numb. The cure to this exact poison lies in its sister tree, the choca. And as if that wasn't enough all on its own, what's more, they are always found to be right next to each other in nature. There is a Mayan myth that comes with these trees that they are from two brothers that fought each other over the love of a woman, but they ended up killing each other, and the woman, Nikta, died of heartbreak. One of the brothers, Kinich, was kind and caring, and thus became the choca tree. The other brother, Tizik, was cold-hearted and arrogant, and became the Chechen tree. Poisons and cures found in nature are of course a reality in many different instances, but the fact that these trees are right next to each other in nature, and provide exactly opposite effects, is pretty crazy. An active one in the archaeology world is the exact time frame of when humans made it to the Americas. The date keeps getting pushed back with more controversial discoveries that then just turn to evidence as they pile up. It's a fascinating story to see unfold. Yeah, I like this one too. I think many of the traces of early settlement are likely submerged. Sea levels were much lower during the Ice Age and the majority of human settlements are along the coasts, so a huge piece of our history is probably lying on the seafloor completely undisturbed and possibly well preserved. In Australia, in 2011, someone broke into a TV station and spent 4 hours flushing $100,000 down the toilet. B pooper. I read these threads and wonder how many disappeared people are homeless transients with no memory of who they are. There must be considerable overlap, I imagine. Just saw an article about a woman believed to be dead for 30 years found in Puerto Rico. She left her Baptist husband and family to just live out her life and PR, but mental illness was what prompted her move without telling anyone, and her dementia was what helped them figure out who she was and where she was from. Sad. So the monarch butterfly migrates to Mexico and back every year. During the year there are a full 4 generations of butterflies that live and die during the journey. Upon returning back from Mexico, the butterfly manages to find the same trees its relatives started out at despite never having been there. What's even more amazing is that every 4th generation of monarchs live considerably longer so they can make the migration. Who was behind the Gardner Museum heist? Hundreds of millions of dollars worth of art was taken, and we have little to no clue who was behind it, and none of the paintings have surfaced. One of my favorite unsolved mysteries. If you've not heard the podcast Last Seen, give it a listen. We like to think we understand the universe and that physics is a well-grounded discipline, and in some ways it is. However, we have no idea what dark matter or dark energy is, and yet we think it makes up 27% and 68% of the universe respectively. We still don't understand gravity that well. Our understanding of physics is still in its infancy. Why is there something rather than nothing is still pretty much idem ho. Yeah, what fucks with my mind is either something came from nothing or there was always something. If I think too long about it, it breaks my brain. The final words of the Emperor Titus were, "I have but one regret." We don't know and never will what that regret was. Edit. On reflection, it's even better, I have made but one mistake. Supreme confidence. His only regret was that he had Benitis. That most of human history isn't documented and we will never know our entire history as a species. We didn't start recording our history until 5000 BCE. We do know we shifted to agrarian societies around 10,000 BCE, but beyond that we have no idea what we were like as a species. We will never know the undocumented parts of our history that spans tens of thousands of years. We are often baffled by the technological progress of our ancient ancestors, like those in Asia who must have been masters of the sea to have colonized the variety of islands there and sailed vast stretches of ocean to land on Australia and New Zealand. What is ironic is we currently have an immense amount of information about our world today and the limited documented history of our early days as a species, but that is only a small fraction of our entire history. What's crazy to think is New Zealand didn't have humans until the RST%20 settlers %20 probably %20 arrived. Discover %20 new %20 Zealand %20 was %20 cube. It's a pretty recently settled area. Neither medicine nor science has an answer for what consciousness is, or where it originates. Emergence as a concept is crazy. Like an atom of an orange doesn't contain orangeness, but if you put billions of them together then they do. I don't know about biggest, but I always thought the Voynich manuscript was very interesting. A huge book written in an unknown language or cipher that has never been translated or decoded, with diagrams of plant species that don't exist. Lots of theories surrounding it, but no definitive answers as to the origins or the content. My favorite theory is it is an ancient version of a game not unlike Dungeons and Dragons, and someone was simply inventing fictional things for the purpose of game. Why did we all just globally decide that those blue Dutch cookie tins hold sewing supplies? A few years ago I found myself finally in possession of enough random buttons and such that I figured I could use a designated container to hold my sewing supplies, and I found myself thinking, oh hey, this could work well regarding one of those blue Dutch cookie tins. I also decided at that moment, ah fuck, I must be getting old, but I use that tin anyway. It's in my craft bin downstairs right now with sewing supplies in it. In its defense, it is a puncture-proof container, which makes it good for all the pokies that come with sewing. Deleted. How the universe is even possible? Why the fuck do we even exist? Does the universe have an end? If so, what's beyond it? What was there before the universe? No one knows exactly who founded Rome, or when. All known records of the city's early history date from the 5th or 6th century BC at the earliest, which doesn't help the usual foundation date of 753 BC, and all of the foundation myths are exactly that, stories. All we know with any certainty is that Rome was ruled by kings at some point in its early history. But we don't know who founded Rome. If it really was by a Romulus type figure, or if it was multiple villages that eventually merged into a single town. Even with the latter possibility, it's unknown when those communities would have considered themselves as a single town or when they decided to call it Rome. Romulus, hey, what should we call this city? Remus, I was thinking Reem. Romulus, grabs spear. The lead mask mystery of Brazil. The bodies of two men found wearing lead masks covering their eyes with a notebook that mysteriously read 4:30 p.m. be at the determined place 6:30 p.m. swallow capsules, after effect, protect metals, wait for signal in Portuguese. Read up on it a little. One theory revolves around the testimony of a friend of the two men, who claimed that they were members of a group of scientific spiritualists. The men were apparently attempting to contact extraterrestrials or spirits using psychedelic drugs. Believing that such an encounter would be accompanied by blinding light, the men cut metal masks to shield their eyes and may have died of drug overdoses. This account is corroborated by the esoteric diary entry found at the scene and by mask making materials and literature concerning spirits found at the men's homes. Why is the letter D in fridge, but not in refrigerator? Refrigerator knocked me out of the 5th grade spelling bee. That damn D. Back in 2002 I folded and placed $3 100 bills in my back right pocket while standing in my living room. I grabbed my wallet from the bar, walked to the front door where I decided it was safer to transfer the $100s to my wallet. My pocket was empty. There was no one else home. I looked everywhere for more than an hour. This episode has seriously damaged my sanity and self-esteem. You only thought you put them in your pocket. You actually dropped them just behind you. They floated lazily for a moment before slipping perfectly between the grills of the horizontal vent on the side of your bar, at floor level. At which point I found them, because I live in your ducts. You fed my family for 2 years with that money, and I will never forget it. We are your vassals, and will come to your aid should another house lord rise against you. When I was a kid I was playing with a bouncy ball in my room. It had rolled under my bed and I went to go grab it. Absolutely nothing was under the bed. Being a small child with an attention span of a goldfish, I started to play with Legos instead. A couple minutes later the ball rolled out from under the bed, seemingly from nowhere. I don't like that one bit. Imhotep was a super genius in ancient Egypt, around 2700 BC. He was, allegedly, an amazing physician, the architect of one of the first proto-pyramids, invented a bunch of stuff. A century after his death, people started worshipping him as the god of medicine. And yet, his tomb has never been found. To me, that's fascinating. He must have been given an amazing burial, and if his tomb were ever found, we'd probably discover some really cool stuff. But its location is still unknown. I often wonder if he used his giant brain to design and or hide his own tomb so well that no looter, no archaeologist, but I'm being redundant, would ever find it. From what I understand, Imhotep was basically like Leonardo da Vinci of his era. Wiki has more on him. https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/Imhotep. What was there before the Big Bang? Young Sheldon. Who is going to Long John Silver's enough to keep them around? My Russian Orthodox grandparents every Friday. The disappearance of Asher Degree. 9-year-old Asher Degree disappeared from her home in Shelby, North Carolina on Valentine's Day 2000. She went to bed the night before, and when her mother went to wake her up in the morning, Asher was gone. She was seen walking along Highway 18 at around 4 o'clock in the morning. Several passing motorists saw her, and when one turned around and began to approach her, she left the roadside and ran into a wooded area. It was a cold night and the witness said there was a storm raging when he saw her. She wasn't wearing a jacket or socks. A year after she vanished, a construction worker found her book bag in a wooded area. It was wrapped in a plastic bag. My stepdaughter, 60-yo, schizoaffective bipolar, mental age 6, left the house at 2 a.m. in t-shirt pants, no shoes, temps in the teens. Found in the fields with severe hypothermia at dawn. If she hadn't left the front door open, we'd never have known she was gone. She survived. Probably was delusional psychotic when she left. Did D.B. Cooper survive or did he die? Right outside of Woodland, Washington, there used to be a restaurant named Ariel's. Once a year they held D.B. Cooper Days. It was an event where a large group of people scoured the forest trying to find any evidence or money. Then afterwards they got drunk and ate tacos. Who is Jack the Ripper? Who murdered Elizabeth Short? Who murdered John Bernard Ramsey? I'm thinking it was several different people. In India, In the early 2000s there a creature called the Monkey Man who was attacking the people living in Delhi, and people were so terrified from him that they stopped sleeping in night so that they can protect themselves. We still don't know whether it was real or was it just a rumor that people started believing in. India has some super scary unsolved mysteries. Like the family that committed a mass suicide, or the unknown individual, S, who murdered homeless people by dropping boulders on their heads as they slept. Who was behind the max headroom signal hijacking? The murder of Atlan Shuaya, Mongolian model. Nobody knows for sure what happened, but the general theory that Malaysia's former prime minister and his whichever wife murdered her is generally accepted as truth. Poor woman had C4 strapped all over her body before she was blown up. Google the story and I'll be happy to fill in the gaps for any further info. My family are very close to politicians and I interviewed the lead investigator. What did she do to deserve to be blown? I mean, they can easily poisoned her or shot her, though why blown her? I would really like to know how bread was invented. Which madman looked at a field of wheat and thought to themselves, if we dry it and ground it, mix it with water, pound it into a bowl and place it in a warm box for a while, it could be really delicious. And don't get me started on yeast. Cashews are wild. The fruit's juices are extremely toxic and direct skin contact leaves chemical burns. But we decided to take out its stem core, remove its shell, prep the core in a specific way so it's no longer harmful to consume, and then finally taste it? Or were people really just mowing down on things that burned their mouths and intestines? Where is Jimmy Hoffa? Real answer is probably in multiple places. My father, a deceased teamster, always said, Jimmy Hoffa will always be remembered in our foundation. We just don't know which building. What happened to flight MH370? So I'm Malaysian and followed the story until a few years ago when our government stopped searching. Basically, the generally agreed upon theory is that the pilot had severe mental illnesses and was suicidal. While all the passengers were sleeping and the plane was cruising, he depressurized the cabin, and that apparently just makes everyone lose consciousness. From there the plane eventually just fell into the sea. I'm reading this with Wikipedia open in the other tab. Clearly there is only one answer. How the fuck does the universe even exist? Who blew up the Georgia Guidestones? That was a big story for about 2 days, then not mentioned again. Deleted. Wasn't it proven to be just some guys trying to recruit for a rig company or something? Why does Donald Duck put a towel around his waist when he gets out of the shower if he doesn't wear pants? Because when he takes a shower, the soap washes off the oil, which keeps his feather dry. So, he's cold right after shower. Cleopatra's tomb is still undiscovered officially, so that may be. Where the fuck did my 10mm socket go? Your kid used it to make a bong. The Las Vegas mass shooting was in the news for like 3 days, and then nothing. Survivors and victims' families are still looking for answers. That's fucked up considering it's biggest mass shooting in US history, 60 dead and hundreds injured, and it's like it's forgotten. Who were the Sea People? Where is the body of Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan? Who wrote the Voynich manuscript? What happened to the colony of Roanoke? Genghis Khan's body was carried by his most trusted advisors, burnt in a forest, spread somewhere, and then the advisors were executed. And then the executioners got killed. And then the killers killed themselves. The Bronze Age collapse. I don't think it's a big mystery, as we can assume that it was a few probable factors which are probably true. It didn't just end just like that with no clear explanation. While we don't have the exact answer, it was probably multiple factors like mass migration, natural disasters, invasions, etc. Because what else could it be? Though it's still interesting to think about. If I could answer any question, It would be the origin of viruses. I've read that it likely coincides with the origin of life. That they were hand in hand. So we're still figuring out both of them. If by in human history you mean during human history, what happened to all the other human species? Did we kill them? Did they go extinct independently from us? A mix of both? Did we assimilate some to the last individual? Could we have built a civilization together with another human species? Otherwise, where the universe came from, and did it start with the Big Bang, or was that just something that happened inside a larger universe? The treasure of the Knights Templar. To this day it has never been found. Is it true that it exists, or is it just fiction? How can treasures of that magnitude just vanish? The story behind it is fascinating. But is it just that now a story that is now a part of the history behind the Knights Templar and the treasure doesn't actually exist anymore? Maybe one day someone will find out. Einstein said his last words on his deathbed in German to a nurse who only knew English. We will never know his last words. How Steven Seagal was ever classed as a martial artist action movie star. The Behind the Bastards on him says that during his Buddhist phase, he basically bribed a high-ranking Lama to officially recognize him as the reincarnation of a 17th century Tibetan priest. Theoretically, the world's Buddhists should venerate Steven Seagal the same way they do the Dalai Lama, and I think that's just about the funniest thing I've ever heard. Did all languages come from a common ancestor or develop independently?